While the elite debated in calm and the IRGC tightened its grip, the streets of Iran began to speak. The long-suppressed anger of a nation had finally reached a flashpoint. It began in the Grand Bazaar. Shopkeepers, crippled by the collapsing rial and soaring costs, closed their doors. The economic heart of the city had stopped beating. The grievance was no longer localized. From the borderlands to the capital, the protests spread with lightning speed, transcending class, age, and geography. University students, factory workers, teachers, and pensioners, segments of society that had rarely united before, were now marching as one. The social contract was dead. The slogans shifted. Economic frustration transformed into a political demand for the end of the system itself. The shadow of the 1979 revolution loomed over the new dissenters. The death of Khamenei had removed the ultimate symbol of stability. In the power vacuum, the public saw not just a transition, but an opportunity for a different future. Calls for unified action grew louder. Exiled figures and domestic activists alike pushed for a referendum, demanding the right to decide the nation's political identity. The regime's response was swift and brutal. The security apparatus, fearing for its own survival, was given a simple instruction: crush the dissent at any cost. Repression escalated to unprecedented levels. The use of force was no longer a deterrent. It was an act of open warfare against the populace. The human cost began to mount. Thousands were killed or injured. The government acknowledged the violence, but the true scale of the tragedy was hidden behind a wall of silence and propaganda. Mass arrests followed. Tens of thousands were detained, including children as young as 14. The prisons were overflowing, and the rule of law had become a weapon. Enforced disappearances became a common tactic. The fear of being taken in the night was used to paralyze those who still considered taking to the streets. To conceal their actions, the government imposed total internet blackouts. The nation was cut off from the world, silenced in its most desperate hour. Extensive surveillance and facial recognition were used to identify every dissenter. There was no longer any private space in the Islamic Republic. Every citizen was a target. The death penalty was deployed as a political tool. The judiciary, once a symbol of justice, now functioned as the final stage of the regime's repressive machinery. But protests in Iran are not a new phenomenon. The country has a long history of recurring uprisings, each one larger and more determined than the last. The public's resilience was absolute. The regime's reliance on brutal force revealed a terminal crisis of legitimacy. A system that must war against its own people to survive is a system in its final stages. The interplay of internal crises and external military pressure led to a point of no return. The status quo was shattered, and the transition of power was now irreversible. The international community condemned the brutality. The UN demanded an immediate end to the force, but the regime was now deaf to everything but its own survival. As the internal agitation threatened the very existence of the state, the global response accelerated. Next, we examine the diplomatic shockwaves. Part 9. International Response.